for joining me, Redhead to Revhead, for another episode of What's in the Bag. So if you've seen my two previous videos, you know that I'm talking about right now what I carry on a pretty regular basis in my saddlebags. And I wanted to spend a little bit more time on one piece in particular, my medical bag. For some of you, you're probably going to think I am a total nervous Nelly rider, and that's really not the case. I tend to I have all my life like to be prepared for whatever might happen. And I recently took an accident scene management class for bystanders, which if you have a course like that in your area, I would highly suggest that you take it. It's a couple hours of your day, and it's some really valuable knowledge that could not only help save your life, but could help save someone else's if the situation ever arose. So I wanted to spend a little more time on that. I've always been the good Girl Scout, so I tend to be prepared for whatever situation if I can. But there were some very valuable things that I picked up. I've always carried a little bit of a first aid kit, you know, your basics, your Band-Aids, your sting stuff, stuff for upset tummies. You know, it's no fun to be on a long motorcycle trip and just not feel so great. So I often end up not using the things for myself, but for the people that I ride with. So I just like to make sure everybody is taken care of and safe and feels good, because I feel like if not only we're mentally prepared for a day of riding, but if we're physically feeling well, we're going to be less likely to have accidents or issues down the road. Previous video I also showed you, it's not the most glamorous decal on a motorcycle, but I'll show you what I've got on here. So let's take a peek. This little guy right here, my little Red Cross sticker, super exciting, beautiful decal, isn't it? I have that on there for a couple of reasons. One, I carry all this stuff because I figure if I have it, I'm never actually going to need to use any of the real serious stuff. But two, if I've got that Red Cross sticker on that particular saddlebag and I keep my medical equipment in that bag, if I go down, the people that I ride with typically know what I carry, so they've got access to where it is easily. Or if I'm tending to someone who needs help and I need that first aid kit, I can tell someone easily, hey, go get it. It's in the saddlebag with the Red Cross on it. Super easy to find. Certainly part of the key in any accident scene management is timing, as it is with any accident scene, whether it's a home accident or it's a car accident. So we'll talk about that bag here real quick. So let's take a peek at that guy. All right. So first, and I'm going to preface this with, I am not a medical professional, so I do apologize if any of this information is not 100% accurate. I'm also not instructing a class. I am not a trainer. I am not an instructor in any of this information. These are just some of the things that I have learned over the last probably 8 years, and specifically since I took the class, some of the things that I have added to my first aid kit. This is bigger than what I used to carry for a couple of reasons. So I carry this bright orange bag that says first aid on it so that it is easy to identify. If you've got everything jammed into a dark black saddlebag in a black bag, it's obviously going to be harder to root through what you have and find what you need in an emergency. Because we always also want to think about emergency situations where our adrenaline is going, we're probably not thinking super clear. We might have other people with us on a ride who are shaken and need attention as well. And so making things easy to find is number one. All right, so as I mentioned, some of this stuff that I carry, and I carry them in this front little pouch for a reason. This is not going to be where I'm going to find my critical stuff. So I tend to travel with a spouse that has often tummy troubles, and it makes my life easier to have stuff on hand like Alka-Seltzer, Pepto-Bismol, Benadryls. I don't know about you, but when I travel on long distance road trips, sometimes I have a hard time falling asleep. Like the wheels are just going, all I can hear is wind, and so an occasional Benadryl kind of actually helps me get to sleep. Some Zantac, those kind of things, not your super critical first aid stuff. All right, so we'll get into the meat of the first aid kit. So this, at first glance, is what it looks like when I open it. Whoops. All right, so I showed you one of these in my previous video as far as what tools and equipment I carry. That one was, I need to put a new battery in it, but let's see, I always end up blinding myself. Okay, so super bright flashlight. This one also comes in handy because it's got this really bright stick light here. You could leave this, on the side of the road if, say, a bike is down in a deep ditch and there's a person down there, you've called for medical attention, medical help, and they need to identify, you could say there's a really bright flashlight on the side of the road, that's where they're located, when you call. So thinking about something like that, better yet, if you've got one that has a strobe function, that can really catch attention as well, especially in a group scenario, or if you've got, a hill leading to an accident scene, something to catch people's attention that there's something going on. Okay, so the thing that fell on the floor. So I carry these Quick Clot cloths, and I've actually got a couple of them. They do have to be replaced, I believe, every 2 years is what they told us in the class. I actually didn't know that before the class. My husband actually has a genetic blood clotting disorder, so he takes warfarin, and warfarin just naturally thins your blood, so he's on that forever. And that's kind of one of my concerns, is that if something ever happens to him, he gets run off the road, he just has an accident, goes down, bleeding for him is going to be probably much more serious than it is for the average person. So I carry these Quick Clot cloths. Again, make sure you read instructions so that you know how this stuff works in the event you ever need to use it. Okay, if there's one thing you need to carry, one or two things you need to carry for first aid, a little trauma pack like this, you can find these on Amazon, but they have a whole bunch of just basic, more serious first aid stuff. So they have a Quick Clot cloth in here. They have some bandages, gauze that you can use obviously as a bandage or a tourniquet, but there's some really great stuff in here and I would encourage you, open it up, take a look at everything that's in there, familiarize yourself with it. But these are nice and compact and don't take up a ton of room in your saddlebag if you're going to carry just one or two things. Okay, so this is what I used to carry. Was like just this little first aid kit, which is totally cool. It's going to handle most of your daily scrapes and burns and that kind of thing. But in this one, we got rubber gloves, which I carry these not only just for accident scene, but I've used these often when it rains, either over or under my gloves just to keep my hands dry. They're not going to be warm, but they'll be dry. So you've got that. It's got things like ibuprofen. You've got an emergency whistle. Again, if you're off in a field where somebody's been ejected from a motorcycle or is down in a ditch, this can be helpful. I've had to use these little fine tweezers a couple of times just for removing things like ticks and the occasional splinter. So I've got those. We've got some camphor bug bite stuff. So if you ride long enough, you probably do get stung by something. I've been stung in the neck, I've been stung in the belly, I've been stung on the hand. It just happens. So, you're cruising down the road without any protection and somebody's gonna sting you. So you've got that. There's things in here like gauze and, bandage wrap and that kind of thing. I usually carry some just regular Band-Aids here as well. Those I've probably had to use the most on the road just for occasional scrapes. We were on a road trip in Utah and one of my friends, we were kind of walking under this old abandoned bridge and there was a hanging metal piece, and sure enough, he bumped his head into it and we just needed a quick Band-Aid just to clean things up and some alcohol pads, just to make sure things are sanitary and that he didn't get tetanus. These I carry just some unscented baby wipes, and these have come in handy many times, obviously not for medical reasons, but again, you end up in some of these remote areas, and if you ride with me and my girlfriends, we have to pee all the time. So we often end up peeing in the woods. For me, that's quite a production. So some unscented baby wipes are always a good idea. Not to mention, if you're on the road a long time, you're in a dusty, dirty highway, whatever it is, it's always nice to give yourself a quick refresh. So you've got those. Trauma shears. These I've added since the class, and I hope I never, ever have to use them. They can cut through a penny, but obviously for getting through chaps or thick jeans, a leather jacket, if you need to assess what's going on with someone. They did tell us a story that I think is good to share, that if you're riding with someone who rides in a club and they have a club vest or something like that, their colors, they may not let you cut it if they're coherent, or if you are going to cut it and you can, obviously you want to save the person first, not worry about any of the political stuff. But if that becomes an issue, cut up the seam if you can so that it can be re-sewn if that ever is a concern. So just stop a second and think about that. But trauma shears. All right. Oh, do I have it in here? I do. Okay, so this might sound funny, but I carry a couple of permanent markers and a little Post-it note pad that I got from, I think, BMW when I was at an event. I should also mention, I want to back up a second, that part of the reason I'm doing these videos is I am a long distance sponsor for Moon Motorsports here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, and they are based out of Monticello, Minnesota. They're a great company. They're a local shop and sell lots of different brands of motorcycles. But usually you hear more about like flat track racers and racing programs sponsoring motorcyclists. And they've really kind of gone the extra mile to expand their sponsorship and start at more the grassroots level of everyday motorcyclists. Obviously, not all of us are going to go flat track race. So I'm their long distance sponsor, which means I do obviously long distance riding, but they have things like adventure riders. They've got some youth sponsors in there as well, artists that are focused in the motorcycle industry, all sorts of really cool stuff. So anyway, that's part of the reason I'm doing all this stuff. So partly what I learned in the class as well is carry a couple of Sharpie markers and, you know, a little notepad or something. The other kind of funny thing that I never thought about is a lot of times we end up riding with folks that we don't know their legal name. We only know their street name. We just know that their name is Bones or, you know, whatever their biker name is. If something happens to that person and they're coherent, make sure you ask what their legal name is and write it down. You could also write it down on their arm, on their forehead if they don't have head wounds, you know, and if you've safely removed their helmet, that kind of thing, because that's going to be really, really crucial in timing for the paramedics when they get there to know that information and for you to not have to retain it and try to remember all of these details. But write down when the accident happened, write down the basics of what you know, why it happened, you know, the bike details if you can, but any pertinent information, if they are any medications that might be important for them to know, have any medical conditions or concerns, you know, any information you can get, carry these guys with you. And of course, test these out every season because they tend to dry out in the saddlebags. All right. I do also carry, I am CPR certified, so I also do carry a mask, a CPR mask here as well. Did you know, fun fact, that when you give someone CPR, it is not at all uncommon that as air gets into their system, that they actually can regurgitate or throw up. So I carry this one-way valve mask that obviously fits over your mouth, allows you to do CPR without having anything come back at you. But there are tons more information that I learned in the class as well that I just would recommend if you get a chance to take an accident scene bystander class, do it. Set it up with your girlfriends, set it up with your guy friends, whatever, spend an afternoon or a morning. I think it was maybe like 3 or 4 hours. I can't remember now. Maybe it was an entire day. I don't know. But one day of your life for all of this information, very much worth it. Okay, last couple things. Put that guy back in there. Couple of Mylar thermal blankets. You can get these also on Amazon. Usually you can get them just one at a time or in a 6-pack. I carry a couple of these. Also, partly because of the class, excuse me. Did you know that it is not uncommon for bystanders who are not physically injured to go into shock as well? So, you know, it's not uncommon to leave an accident scene and all of a sudden somebody's getting woozy and wobbly because their adrenaline has run out, and all of a sudden the reality of what has just happened hits them and they just can't ride. They're not in a good place to ride. So one, you typically want to get anybody out of the accident scene that does not need to be involved with it. Get them up the road a little bit, whatever, give people space to work and do what they need to do. But carry these. They're super compact. They can come in handy for a lot of reasons. One, if you get drenched in the rain, you're freezing, you don't have shelter, anything like that, this is awesome. You can even tuck these underneath your motorcycle jacket if you really are in a pinch and need to get both some waterproof capabilities and retain some body heat. This can be a lifesaver that way as well, literally and figuratively. But you can also use this if somebody is down, say they've got a broken leg, you can't get them up, they can't walk, or they're unconscious. You can roll them onto one of these and drag them, if they're in the road, what have you, drag them to a safe place if it's safe to do so. Likewise, you can also use this to help someone if they have been in an accident, also to prevent or reduce them going into shock. So a couple of these guys, almost done. All right, so this is the CAT tourniquet. This is the one that is recommended and used typically, to my knowledge, by professional paramedics. And they come in, of course, black, which is a little more chic, but I have the orange, and the orange is recommended. This is what the paramedics typically carry, because if you figure you put this down in a bag full of medical gear and you need to find your tourniquet, it's going to be really hard to find a black one. So I would suggest, I've tested this out on myself, and they teach you how to use these in the class as well, but there's lots of great YouTube videos on how to use these also. They come all bundled up, and they recommend the first thing you do is unbundle them so that you're not futzing around with it in an accident scene, and you have quick access and know how to use it. Also learn how to use it on yourself. I did it on myself, and it's actually really not terribly hard, but also I wasn't just in a crash. So, but these could be a little bit tricky. There's also ways to use like long bits of gauze in that and a stick to create a tourniquet. So these I would recommend also. And finally, okay, if there's one thing you're gonna carry a little compact first aid like this with some Band-Aids, some gauze, you know, a long piece that you could use as a tourniquet, something like that, some aspirin, and oh, where are they? Here they are. That reminded me. Electrolyte powder, I carry a couple of these. These are great to have just for the summer months if you're riding and it's really hot. The other things that can be really great for blood stopping, tampons. You got a nosebleed, you know, you've got a cut that's pretty deep that, you know, you just need to stop the blood. A couple of tampons, you know, they're compact, we know it, and or if you just got a bunch of lady friends and you need to have those handy, then you probably should carry a couple. All right, moving on. So the other thing, so again, back to if there's a couple of things that are really important that you should carry a small compact first aid kit. In that kit, carry something like this that has information on it as to your full name. I have my blood type on here as well. I have my emergency contacts and their phone numbers, so my ex-husband and my husband. And then I have some just basic information about I'm not allergic to anything, you know, that I have a living will, that I'm a mom, sister, wife, and a friend, so that they know I'm not just living alone at home and there's nobody for them to call. So, you know, I carry this as well. So I also carry in here, not that it's part of my medical stuff, but I carry my motorcycle ID information just in case we need a VIN number or anything like that. So that is it. That is what I carry in my first aid kit. I hope I never, ever have to use any of the really serious stuff. But familiarize yourself with it. You know, I know we all like to ride footloose and fancy free and just hop on the bikes and go. And, you know, the reality is that it's possible that either you encounter somebody who has had an incident or you have one yourself. So being prepared in my mind is just the best thing you can do. So I appreciate you following me along here today, and I hope some of that information was helpful. If you want additional information, please feel free to reach out. I will try to put some links down below for some of the materials that I carry here. And if you have any tips or tricks or things that you carry on a regular basis that I'm missing or you think other people should know about, please do leave a comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.